Good evening, everyone. Hope you are all doing great. I welcome you all to our 22nd Slaver webinar, which is Making Community Participation Meaningful, a lesson from Empower Covid in her voice report. So, as you all know, that this is organized by SLAVA, which is also known as South Sri Lankan Sri Lanka Development Asia, and also it is collaborated with Evaluate Sri Lanka, Evaluation Association for India, APIA, and Center for Evaluation, University of Sri Jayawardena, and APC Hub. So before we start, so I am Shaista Jabin. I'll be moderating this event. I am core group member of Evaluate Pakistan, and I'm a monitoring and evaluation research learning professional at Development Alternate Incorporated. And I am also a gender equality activist from Pakistan. So before we start, can I kindly request you all to please keep your microphone and videos disabled so that we can lessen the load on internet to avoid any disruption. And also, if you have any queries or concerns, please log them in the chat bar so that we can refer to them. So going forward for opening remarks, I will invite Ms. Ritu. She is a monitoring and evaluation learning community process consultant with Global Fund for Children. She also moderates gender and evaluation online community for Institute of Social Studies Trust. She's also a member of Evaluate Gender Plus Management Group and co-group member Evaluation Community of India. So Ms. Ritu, over to you.
Thanks, Shaista. Thanks, Leva team. My internet is a bit patchy, so that my audio is clear. I'm just switching off the video, but very, very happy to be here. Let me give you a background of why we are having this consultation. Asia Pacific Evaluation Association, APIA, has 8 thematic groups in its evaluation strategy. One of the thematic areas is community ownership in evaluation. And a group of us started working on it. And the first action we took is organizing an online consultation in July, where almost 100 people came together to exchange their perspectives. I want to share 3 key points from that consultation. First thing, they said that the role of communities is extremely important in development as well as evaluation. Why? Because it is their lived experience and they are the experts of their own knowledge, the indigenous wisdom. Second takeaway was that this does not imply that other stakeholders do not have a role. They have a role and they bring in different other capacities to development and evaluation. It begins with the belief that communities have the capacity to address their own issues and evaluate themselves. Haven't we been surviving and thriving for centuries in this world, right? Then what is the role of these stakeholders? We had a lot of discussion. It is facilitative. It is providing the resources which communities themselves do not have. And these communities are the most marginalized, the most vulnerable. So do they have a role in decision making? And that is the eye we outsiders have to keep an eye on. The third takeaway was that do not use the term participation casually. Reminded all the participants again and again. We had questions like who decides what issue we will work in communities? Who designs the intervention? Who implements and who monitors and evaluates? Who disseminates the report and who takes the decision on these reports? And these are the questions I am leaving you with. And I'm sure that the sharing by the Empower team will leave you more inspired with many more questions. The respect which Empower team has for communities has inspired me a lot. And let's enjoy the session, and over to the Empower team and the moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ritu, for your kind words. Now, going forward, may I please invite our speakers for today. Our first speaker for today is Jayanti Pushkaran. She is a senior program officer at Adolescent Girls at Empower. She is leading and managing the expansion of Adolescent Girls Learning Community Initiative and the Girls Advisory Council framework in India. She holds an MPhil degree in Science and Public Policy from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. Our second speaker for this session is Ms. Shiri Ansari. She is a youth leader and Leaders Lab Fellow for Empower. She was also part of Empower Participatory Action Research COVID in her voice. She's keenly interested in working with adolescent girls and young women on career awareness and gender equality. So over to Ms. Jayanti and Shireen for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Saista. Could I request Sleva team to put up my presentation? Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. At least where I'm sitting, it's evening here. My name is Jayanti Pushkaran. I am the Senior Program Officer for Empower, which is also called the Emerging Markets Foundation in India. I'm so thrilled to be presenting and sharing our learnings from COVID in Her Voice report with all of you today. I have the pleasure of co-presenting with Shireen Ansari, who is Empower's Leaders Lab Fellow and one of the lead researchers who has agreed to share her insights with us today. One thing to remember is that unlike you guys, both of us are not evaluation professionals. But however, as practitioners and implementers of youth program and someone who has attended youth programs, evaluation happens to be a key part of most of the things that we do. Can I request you to change the slide? Thank you. To tell you a little bit about COVID in Her Voice research, Empower facilitated this unique participatory action research earlier this year in India with support from UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Empower trained 25 girl leaders from cities across India to interview 150 other adolescent girls in their communities, which was basically to find out how the pandemic had affected their daily lives, covering topics like their access to school and work, mental and physical healthcare, ability to move around, mobility, and pressures and burdens and barriers that the girls are facing at home and in their communities. The girl leaders played a key role in the research, right from designing the questionnaire, defining the selection criteria, analyzing the result and decisions about how that research has to be disseminated. In addition, they also made a recommendation based on the finding on how concrete actions that government and other various stakeholders can take. The findings from the research is very enlightening. I will be sharing the link to this research report so all of you can go through it. We won't be talking about the research so much today, but we'll be focusing on the learnings that we had from this process. So equally significant as the findings themselves is the approach that was taken, putting research largely in the hands of girls and shifting the center of power, therefore. Could I please request to change the slide? So I work with our grantee partners in India and other places and young people in the past 2 decades has not only helped us emphasize on the importance of community involvement, ensuring that programs are effective, initiatives, and even evaluation. But also, it also brought out the need that the ways that we practice evaluation must also shift, so that evaluation doesn't remain something that is done to people, rather than something that is done with people, for them, and why not by them, by all means. This reminds me of a famous quote from Alice in Wonderland, which goes like, if you don't know where you are going, any road will get you there. This applies to evaluation too. Involving community in evaluation, it is very important to define and decide where we are going, or it also helps in assessing, are we really going there or not? When the plan and commitment for evaluation is rooted in the values, in the priorities of community, everything changes. What we are looking at, what findings are telling us, how do we use that information, how it contributes to the evidence of impact, our own experiences, and how it contributes to what communities conceive as the change is. So today, Shireen and I will try to share with you our own learnings on evaluation that we had, and a little bit about how we can try and strengthen our community relationship through the processes, and help and how we can help us balance both learning and a process of creating accountability. Next slide, please. Could you please go to the next slide?
Is this the one?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to go over the next slide. Sorry, I made a mistake. I put this slide first. That is correct. So here is a little cartoon that says, hello, you don't know me and you don't trust me either, but can I ask you a bunch of questions, bunch of deep probing questions about your life, your reality, about your work. And we all have been there. This is how conventional process of evaluation sometimes feel to the person being interviewed, or to the respondent, and we all have been there. So just wanted to highlight that in the conventional processes, when we ask such questions to people, it's going to be a very jarring experience, especially when there is not adequate level of engagement with the community, and we're being very extractive in getting to know everything about them, about their lives. So, and it's not, I'm not at any point of time trying to question the intent of, the evaluation processes, but I'm going to also take a critical look at the world where I come from, the world of donors. Now, for the past, many decades, donors have increased pressure on funding recipients to demonstrate outcomes. There's a lot of pressure to demonstrate outcomes, and this has led to greater emphasis on demonstrating the links between interventions and desired outcomes. And these pressures have often pushed, evaluators away from participatory approaches, which they might want to do, because they're assumed to be subjective or biased. And they sort of push towards the use of external experts whose interaction with community and programs and participants is intentionally limited in order to ensure objectivity, or, in the name of rigor. However, what we have seen is that in doing so, what we do not get is the full picture of what programs are doing in communities, or if they are achieving the intended outcomes. For that full picture to emerge, people who are intended to benefit from the funding need to be heard. Their needs, their capacities, their values, and their insights has to inform the process of evaluation. And we at Empower, this has been a very humble learning for us from the very beginning, to ensure that our work is meaningful and generates sustainable outcomes, and is valued by those that it intends to serve. Their voices must be the front and center of our design, decision-making, and feedback process, so that they just don't remain merely as source of data in our reports. Can you go to the previous slide? Previous. Thank you. Now we know that there are varieties of, stakeholder involvement. My colleague Nisha, she wrote an article in Indian Development Review where she talks about who holds the power in systems. So she talks about three different kinds of power. One is power over, which is a top-down approach that one person or a set of people hold power and then they exercise over others. And power with is where we share power with other participants, and together we chart, how the process is going to go. And that is more participatory, that's more bottom up. So when we look at evaluation, let's just try to understand what is collaborative and what is participatory and where we want to go to. So in collaborative approaches, evaluator is often in charge and looking to collaborate with the community. But here, sharing tools with everyone, but the control remains in the hands of evaluator. In participatory approaches, it's a shared approach. For some part, evaluator is in control, and in some part, community is in control, and they're trying to together move the evaluation forward. And there's another approach called empowerment evaluation, where you're doing everything bottom up, turn the power dynamics upside down, where community is in charge of all the processes, and you as an evaluator are facilitating. In certain cases, you're also coaching, but the control is in the hands of community. Now, in all of these, we have to share power with the communities that we work with. And it's very important because at the end of the day, knowledge is also power. The way knowledge and evidence is produced in the unequal world that we're living in is not always a neutral or objective process. It's always encoded with some purpose, agenda, politics. Therefore, as evaluators, we need to focus on not just learning and merely the evidence, but also, in that process, how to create accountability while working with community. Could you go to the next slide? Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to introduce the criteria that we followed in this participatory action research. There are three important, points. That is, the first one is transparency. The second is learning. And the third is consent, which was pillar to our community-based engagement with girls. And these three components helped in strengthening and, building a relationship with the community and, developing a strategic learning opportunities while we were doing the evaluation. Could you please change the slide? So, what is really important here is to note that evaluation is not just a process, but it's also relationship building, that process of trust building, and that is required not at a later stage when we have conducted the research, but across all the processes that we are doing, and all of this is very important. And especially the point on transparency, how to inculcate honesty and trust in our evaluation processes, be attentive to the power dynamics by learning, focusing on where do we need to build capacity of the participants and building relationship and trust, and then consent, what are the ethical practices? Are we being extractive in our processes to, generate data? How are we addressing the ownership of data? How are we ensuring that there is meaningful participation and not just tokenistic participation? So all of this is very important in all these, at every step of the process. Please change the slide. Now, I would like to focus on, some of the key learnings that we had and the principles that actually guided our research. The first one I would like to focus on is, co-creation. building ownership of the research process and inclusion right from the beginning. And we believe that leadership and wisdom exist in all spheres, and research design is the right stage or opportunity to create a path that enables us to recognize and cultivate this. And change how do we do evaluation. We need to share power right from the very beginning. And then two important processes that we followed. One was to pay attention to the voices of girls and young women so that they have a seat at the table in relation to the issues that are affecting them and the power to design the process. The second is to ensure that we are not replicating the existing power structures that are there in institutions, right? By which I mean that a few people holding the decision-making power who are in the leadership position in institution. You have to enable communities to make decisions in that process. Could you please change the slide? Again, spending more time to build trust, taking measures to enhance participation, focusing on safeguarding of the people who are conducting interview and responding, and creating safe spaces for the community to share, their own realities. Please change the slide. And then, capacity building. Ability to conduct evaluation and investing in the capacity of community to do so, which is very important to improve the strategic planning and implementation of what findings are showing us. Organization learning, so taking a step further from data collection and analysis to involve community in also creating solutions. Accountability, which is very important, for enabling the agency of others, in this case, girls and young women, which means creating and holding spaces so that different kinds of voices can be heard and people can make decisions about their own lives and those around them. And here, again, I would like to focus that this stems from an engagement in a meaningful and non-tokenistic manner, which also allowed us to move from being extractive, for example, using girls as a data point and not reporting to them, to creating feedback, to really creating feedback loops so that we are accountable to them. We did this by asking the girls what they think and then periodically reporting to them what we are doing with the data and what we are doing with the advice that they had given to us. Please change the slide. And the last learning that we had is to amplify the voices of girls and young women. COVID-19 has actually shown us that the role that the girls and young women have played on the front lines, albeit in disseminating information about the pandemic, distributing essential materials, or collectivizing in the face of uncertainty. So rather than treating them as the beneficiaries of the program, we need to start seeing them as leaders who have the resilience, life experience, and expertise to create the change for themselves. On that note, I would like to hand over the mic to Shireen and request her to share her insights and learning. Please change the slide.
Hello everyone, I hope you all can hear me. I'll be keeping my video off for better connectivity. Okay, so I'm a member of Empowers Leaders Lab. I think COVID-19 had a dramatic impact on the daily lives of people. But if there is a section of the society that the pandemic has hit the hardest, it's the adolescents, girls and women. I, along with 24 other girl leaders, conducted a research to study the impact of COVID-19 on adolescent girls in urban India. And we took their recommendations to build back a better, more inclusive, gender equitable world. A few months ago, with the support of UK's FCDO, Empower launched the In Her Voice project. Under this project, Empower developed a leaders lab where 25 girl leaders were virtually trained in participatory action research. We interviewed almost around 153 female respondents from the age group of 10 to 24 in our communities. Our research was unique because it was designed and conducted by girls and with girls. So girls were the researchers as well as the respondents. I believe that a girl knows herself better than anyone. Therefore, it is important to involve her while making the decisions about the things that are related to her life. We were involved at every step of the research, such as first of all, we prepared the questionnaire by working on each question that was going to be asked. We developed the criteria for selecting girls as respondents, and we decided how girls should be involved in this research. We selected girls from various backgrounds who speaks different languages and are often feel left out because of various reasons, just because we wanted to include what each girl had to share in her own way. After that, we did the interviews. At the end, we did the interviews, collected data, we analyzed it, and presented the finding in our report. Before I present the finding with you all, I would like to highlight one point that while I was doing this research, I did the research in my own community where I live. So some of the key findings that came from this research was and are worth sharing. That was 80% of the girls that said that household chores continues to be their responsibility as today. 42% of the girls believe that the pressure to get married has increased due to COVID-19. Nearly 13% of respondents experienced violence, including gender based violence and domestic violence. 64% of girls or young women do not have the space or the time to study online. Around 28% of the girls attending schools do not have the tools to learn online. There were many more other findings also. So those of you who are interested to know more about it, will be sharing the link of our report at the end. Now, I would like to share with you all more about the learnings and findings from the research that was from my own experience as a researcher. First of all, I experienced that there was an instant connect with the girls we interviewed. It helped us to get their insights to understand the impact of COVID-19 on their mobility, education, work, decision to get married, etc., which furthermore has impacted their self confidence, freedom, and support system, and much more. Furthermore, when we involve girls in the research process, they not only design the research from their perspective, but they go beyond to find the solution for the issues they are facing. In my own personal experience, I believe that girls are the best place to let all of us, organizations, policymakers, donors, etc., to know what they should be doing to bring the changes in the lives of girls. Our research has the recommendation from girls about what should be done to bring those changes real or now. Now it's all stakeholders' responsibility to make those changes or bring those changes in our lives. Now I would like to share with you some of the learnings that I had with my with other leaders while we were doing the research. First of all, we understood the importance of research design where the respondents feel safe, included, and at ease. Secondly, we understood that importance of taking their informed consent, involving them in thinking about the problems and getting solutions from them. I learned that we have chosen the language. I understood that we have chosen the language, research style, and questionnaire in a way that is easier for the girls to understand and respond. We should not use jargon or complex language because it would be difficult for them to understand or participate. How to lastly, I learned that how to work with the data and present it in a way that is easier for the stakeholders to understand the report. Lastly, the importance of maintaining a field diary that we also kept, and the importance of empathy that we felt while we were doing the research, building trust and working with a research team. In conclusion to this, lastly, I would also like to add that this participatory action research was an inspiration to me in my career. It changed me as a person. First of all, I've always wanted to work in a field where I could make changes, like real changes in community. After participating in COVID in her voice research, I joined an NGO called Pukar, which is in collaboration with Tata Institute of Social Science, where I am learning more about grassroots research and approaches to work with adolescents, girls, and women. Thank you. Now, if you have any queries or questions, I and Jayanti ma'am would like to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shireen.
Thank you, Jayanti and Shireen, for this insightful presentation of the great work that you have done. So now we will move forward towards our question and answer session. So we might take some questions which are already been parked in our chat group. So the first question is for Jayanti. Okay, so the question is, what helped in creating a safe space where communities can share without any pressure? Jayanti, a question for you.
Sure. Shireen also explained this in her presentation, but I'll just like to give you some example. Safe space, it's not just a physical space around them, but safe space is something that we were focusing on right when we started working on the research design itself. And when we were designing the questionnaire, first when we shared it with the girls leader, they reduced it from 60 questions to 48. And in doing that, they designed the questions in a way that is understandable to the girls in their own community, because language is very, very important. So the inclusion, that sense of safety starts right from how the research is presented to the community. The second thing is to be respectful to the time and the context of the community. So only going and approaching them when they are free and when they have adequate time to respond to our questions. The second was the importance of informed consent. What the research is all about, how it will be used, to tell them what their rights are, and then they can say no at any point of time, and we won't be taking that data. Telling them, transparently that what exactly this data will be used, how their names or nothing will be appearing in any of the products that we will be creating. And in the case of, because it was being conducted when the COVID-19 was going on and it's still on, so social distancing and the priority is for the participant to also feel safe. So we also provided safety kits to the researchers, but at the same time, if, and they were given training to also maintain social distancing while, interviewing. And then, it's very often the case that when you're interviewing young people, someone from the family would come and stand there to monitor what they are saying, and they often feel limited in their capacity, or they won't be able to say something that they are facing in front of someone. So in many cases, and Shane can tell you more about this, how girls leader negotiated that safe space for the respondents in their family, so that they can sit in privacy and talk to the researchers about their own realities. So yeah, this is what we have learned, how to create safe space for community while conducting evaluation. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you, Jayanti, for explaining it very well. So moving toward our next question. So one of the questions, so any one of you can answer it. One of the questions we received is many community level projects, especially livelihood project, reported by the evaluators failed to achieve. One of main reason they had selected a wrong project. So could you suggest how to empower the community on this area?
Yeah, I mean, so I can just take an example from one of the programs that we are working with one of our partners whose name is Azad Foundation, and they train women to become taxi drivers. So when we were funding that particular program, we saw that even after getting the training, women found it very difficult to continue the jobs that they had received. And then, in the first year, if the outcomes, like if women don't stay in the job, so from an outcome point of view, the project is a failure. But what we did was to focus on collecting more data and understand it from women's perspective. What is causing them to drop off from the job? And we continue to look at what their experiences were, and not just the technical part, but what women go through, not in that training program, but in their own homes and in their community. What are the barriers that is stopping them from continuing the job? And we later found out through that process that men and family members were stopping them from taking up the job, because in often cases they were earning more than the other male members from their families would earn. Or, there was a lot of pressure for them to get married and not continue the job. So that was a good insight, like not considering that as a failure, but as an opportunity to probe more how we can work with communities to make that program successful. So that was a good information for us to start working with family members and male members of the women in the community. So I would not say like we need to rethink our own definition of what is success and failure. Maybe the failure is a good insight for us to think about how we need to shift our own work with community. So that's how I would answer that. I hope I have able to address it.
Thank you, Jayanti. Yes, you did. So the next question is for Shiri. So someone want to know that, okay, Ritu want to know that, what is your message for the donors after
yes.
doing this research?
So, yes, since I was a part of this research and I conducted this research, so basically my message to the stakeholders, donors and authorities is that if they are working towards change for women and young women and youth or girls like me, basically they should involve us or ask us, like the way we did it in our research, COVID in Her Voice. We included the girls at every step of the way, our research, during our research. So basically they should involve us, because I believe that we girls knows ourselves better than anyone, so they should directly ask us. They should involve us at every research or every step of the way for better results, and to actually work on towards what we actually want. So that's my answer to the question.
All right, Shiri, thank you for elaborating. So another question for you. I should have, clubbed it with the previous one, but the question is that what actions did you take after this research? So, yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask that is it a personal, like what I did in my personal life or how it changed me? Is that kind of a question?
Yes, you can. So the floor is
Okay,
open. You
so-
can answer it in any way.
Okay, so first, after completing this research and launching the COVID in Her Voice, I basically changed me as a person. I wanted to make changes in my community, because I wanted to do something for my community or make some real changes. So while I was doing this research, I came to this realization that okay, if I really want to make change in my community, or I want to see change in my environment or my surrounding, basically I have to start working at grassroots level, because I cannot be making changes from a top level. So I started working at grassroots level. I completely understood about how research work and what are the points that I should keep in my mind while conducting research. So it made me change and thinking. It changed my perspective about the research and community, and how I can bring changes in my community. So I've started this research program with Pukar, and I've started doing my own community projects where I am bringing changes with teenage girls, and I'm guiding towards their career. So this research, the COVID in her voice, that made me change, and it changed my perspective. I hope it addresses the question.
Yes, exactly. Very inspiring. Thank you, Shireen, for this answer. So we have another question. Can we quickly have that? What challenges did you face during the research study? Can we have few of the challenges?
Yes, yes. Okay. Some of the challenges were, first of all, we conducted this research during lockdown. So some of the challenges that we faced was safety concerns, but we were provided the safety kits by Empower, so we managed that well. Other challenges that we faced, that we were asking girls about their personal lives. So it took a little bit of time and efforts for them to feel comfortable with us. And like Jayanti ma'am said, sometimes we had to research, ask them about include them into our research, so they weren't feeling safe or open with us. And some of the times, because of their house structure and the area they live in, they were not comfortable enough to share in front of their family. And sometimes they did not have enough time because they were handling household chores. So sometimes I have to book there or ask them in advance that when can I come and when can we conduct this research. So I used to book this in advance, and I asked them in advance or conduct the research. First of all, inform them in advance, then I used to go to their houses and find a private space or make a safe space for them where they can open up and freely answer to the questions or share anything they would like to share with me. So first of all, I made a safe space for them so that they can freely and openly share. And sometimes I used to empathize with their situation, because their reality and their situations, the responses I was getting from them or we were getting from them was so painful or hard. Like, so we used to empathize with their situation. It took a time for them to open up with us, but it was a challenging, but it was worth experiencing.
Thank you, Shiri. So, Jayanti, do you want to add on this, or?
I think Shireen has covered it all. And yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that we faced was, because this was happening, we conducted this in January, and where India was definitely seeing the second wave, to how to deliver the training virtually to the leaders. And that we designed a 3-month-long process so that it's not like a bombarding of all the information, but we conducted a series of master classes so that the research team can take their time to design the process. And each master class was followed by some assignments for them to go in the field and do that. And, and you would, what was beautiful that they were first-time researchers, and at sometimes first-time researchers might require support at the local level. So we had invited some staff members from each of the organizations to provide them on-site support if they require any other help to conduct their own research. So these were some of the challenges that we faced, and we sort of try to address it best to support the researchers.
All right, thank you. So we have 2 more questions, and I hope these will be the last question we'll take. So I'm going to both these are on the findings of the research. So I will club both of these. So the first part of the question is, how were the findings used after the research? And the other part is, was there any challenges in application suggestions found in the research?
Sure. I think I'm going to answer the first question, because the second one we have already answered, the challenges and, how we tackle the methodology and stuff. I read a very interesting comment which says that findings are safe in Almira. And I can assure you that findings are not safely kept in an Almira, but it is our commitment to work on it. So the first step that we took was that while we were designing the research itself, the research was designed in two parts. One, to understand the problems, and one, to understand from the community what the solutions are to the problems that they were facing. So when we had that data, we first presented it to a set of experts to, brainstorm about what do we need to do with these findings. As a subsequent process to this, we conducted a stakeholder mapping exercise, stakeholder analysis exercise with the girls, and to each of the problems that they had, they had identified and the solutions, we identified the solutions and what kind of stakeholder can, concretely addresses the suggestions that they had provided. And I would definitely urge you to read the report to go over that. And that was the first step because all the solutions are not in the hand of any one person, but there are certain things that government needs to do. There are certain things that corporates need to do. So we have made the report available in 3 languages so that all the community members and the relevant stakeholders can understand and have access to the report. In addition to that, based on the findings, we started a COVID, in our own fundraising. We're using those, areas to focus on, and we are committed to address the problem as much as with our grantee partners in the programs that we're supporting with them. So I can assure you the findings are not just safe in Almira, but they are translating on the ground.
Thank you, Jayanti. Thank you. I think we are almost over the time. So, and thank you for posting the link of your report here. I think it will help all of us to go through the report thoroughly and to get the answers if are not answered yet. So I think, and let's close this question and answer session now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next slide. So now we'll go towards the closure of our today's seminar. May I please ask Ms. Tarushi to come and give us the closing remarks. Tarushi is a member of Evaluate Sri Lanka chapter. She is undergraduate from the University of Sri Jayawardena, Nipur, Sri Lanka. And she's also a volunteer for Asia Pacific Communication Hub. So Tarushi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shaista. Hi everyone, my name is Tarushi Samarasinghe and I'm a member of Evaluate Sri Lanka. So first of all, I would like to say that I'm very grateful to be here today because I learned a lot from the speakers. For me, this webinar was very informative and insightful, and I'm pretty sure that it has been the same for all the participants too. I would like to thank Sri Lanka Evaluation Association for organizing this amazing webinar series in collaboration with Evaluate Sri Lanka, Evaluation Community of India, Asia Pacific Evaluation Association, and the Center of Evaluation of University of Sri Jayawardena. Also, I would like to express my gratitude towards the Empower for joining with us today to organize today's webinar. At next, we would like to thank our speakers, Jayanti Pushkaran and Shane Ansari Arbela, for the thoughtful content presented today on making community participation meaningful based on the lessons learned from Empower's COVID in her voice report. Further, we would like to thank our moderator, Shaista Jabin, for the wonderful moderation. And at next, I would like to thank Ritu Vinanda for giving the opening remarks. And of course, a huge thank goes to the Slava production team, Randika, Durmina, Hasiti, and Madhuka for being amazing as always in managing the webinar. Finally, we would like to thank our participants for showing an active participation today. and for all the inputs given throughout the session. I hope that you all were able to learn something new from this webinar. So before the end, I would like to remind you all and invite you all to join with us in our upcoming webinars in the same webinar series. Thank you so much. Good night and stay safe.
Thank you, Tarushi. So I will take this opportunity to invite you all for our next Leva webinar, which is on 25th of October. The guest speaker will be Ishani, and it will be moderated by Maha. So please do join that as well. Also, may I ask you all to participate in the campaign that is Walk the Talk from Promise to Action for Influential Evaluation, which starts and on 1st of October and will last till 31st of October 2021. And last but not the least, can we ask you to please join the Evaluate Action for campaign to achieve the Sustainable Development Decade for Evaluation for Action. For more information, please log on to www.evalAction.org. So I think that, and let me thank you all, and let's call it a day, and hope you all have a great the rest of the day. Thank you.